Here we go again, guys. Like you expect every Friday, here's my Read-Aloud of Captain Underpants book 11. It's a Captain Underpants video. Now, where's the stupid book? Wait, So, Captain Underpants and the tyrannical retaliation of the Doppel-Gang 2000, the 11th epic novel by Dav Pilkey. This is the penultimate installment of my Captain Underpants series. I know some of you might be disappointed, but my Captain Underpants series is not going to... Read-Aloud series is not going to last forever. There's only 12 books. But anyways, hi everybody, we're back. And as usual, we're in big trouble again. This comic will help you get up to speed on our story so far. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about Captain Underpants. Once there were two super awesome kids named George and Hal. We rocked the house, Sully, me too. But they had to be Mr. Crow, Mr. Crow, bloody bitty, blah, blah, blah. Mr. Crow tried to blackmail George and Hal. I got you now! So George and Hal hypnotized him. I don't think so. They made him think it was Captain Underpants. It was funny at first, but then he took things a little too far. George, and come back! He got into all sorts of trouble. Then one day he drank some alien superpower juice and he got real superpowers, which got him into even more trouble. Now you see, they're showing all the villains that he fought when he didn't have superpowers, and then all the ones he fought when he did have superpowers. They show all the villains that he fought so far in the series. Well, except for Zork's, Clax, Jennifer, and their evil selves in an alternate universe or stuff like that. But anyway, now whenever Mr. Krupp hears somebody snap their fingers, snap, he turns into Captain Underpants. And whenever anybody pours water on Captain Underpants' head, he turns back into Beetle, Mr. Krupp, blah, blah, blah. One time talking to his attack, blah, 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 blah. Their leader was the Doppel-Gang 2000. George Hill used a weird machine to make a good robot called the Robo Plunger. The Robo Plunger beat up the Doppel-Gang 2000 and flew up to Uranus. Again with that joke. There they have stayed for many months. This other time, Wedgie Woman made two robots. One of them kicked a kickball into outer space. Could these two events be connected? Oh my god. Okay, before we move on, it seems like in this new comic they just abandoned explaining the events of book 6 onwards, because at this point you should have just read the books by now. Like seriously, Dav Pilkey would have been so easy to just paste the number on the spice that the people knew which book they were buying. Well, I don't know. I guess a true Captain Underpants fan would have to know which book they're buying. Anyway, our heroes are about to find out, because at this very moment they're traveling backwards in time to discover the terrible truth. Oh no! Here we go again! Chapter 1, George and Hal. Just George the Hal. Just George the King, a lot of time to thought to Harold about Re-Retaliation to bad haircut. Remember that now. Every time I read that part of my sanity is always lost. Now, if you're confused by what's going on here, don't worry, they're confused too. You see, George, Hal, and Captain Underpants had undergone an epic adventure that started out in the dinosaur age and ended at their school 30 years in the future. Now, thanks to Melvin Sneedly, the telltale genius, his glow-in-the-dark time-traveling robo-squid suit, they're all hurtling backward in time, back to a long, long, long time ago, to that dull, old-fashioned age known as the present. Oh, I almost forgot. Charlie with them were 3 purple and orange speckled eggs, laid by their pet pterodactyl crackers, who, along with their other pet Sula's bionic hamster, had just ate the planet and created all life as we know it simultaneously. See, that wasn't confusing at all, was it? Melvin's glow-in-the-dark time-traveling robo-squid whizzed through time in a dazzling array of electrified candy as 30 years sped by in reverse. Then everything stopped suddenly. George and Hal looked around. Hey, said Hal, we're still here at school. Correct, said Melvin. Only it's now 30 years and 1 day earlier. Hey, look, said George, pointing at the school. That's tipping his roll pants. Not again, Harold moaned. Relax, said Melvin as a flash of green light shot out of the library window. You're looking at something that happened yesterday, remember? Oh yeah, said Harold. We were up in there in the library. We just disappeared into the purple potty. Right, said George. And Tibby is just about to come after us. He should be leaving any second now. Suddenly, a crackling blue light shot out of the robo pants, and before you could say convoluted plot line, it disappeared into the new time haze. Okay, said Melvin, here you are. Home again, jiggity jig. Take your precious eggs and go about your business. Wait a second, said George. Aren't the cops still after us? Yeah, said Harold. Don't they still think we stole that money from the bank? Not anymore, said Melvin, proudly patting himself on the back with one of his mechanical tentacles. Luckily, I have this glow-in-the-dark time-traveling robot-squid suit in my garage. I used to go back in time and hack into the bank's computer. What for? Asked Harold. No big deal, said Melvin. I alter their surveillance images a little bit. Just don't grow a mustache or a beard anytime soon, and you guys will be fine. Wow, said Harold. Melvin Sneedly rescued us. I can't believe it. Yeah, I don't get it, Melvin said George suspiciously. You've always hated us. How come you're being so nice to us all of a sudden? Oh, I have my reasons, said Melvin. I have my reasons. And Melvin did indeed have reasons. 1 whole year's worth of reasons. But before I say that story, I have to tell you this story. Chapter 2. Don't you hate it when a kickball hits Uranus? Why'd you have to word it like that? Anyway, somewhere in the deepest, darkest reaches of our solar system, a red rubber kickball was zooming through space. None of Earth's top scientists could explain where it had come from or why it was racing towards Uranus, but it had been on its present course for the past 5.5 books, and nothing could stop it. The kickball sped closer and closer to a small cluster of porcelain monstrosities that lay together in a heap on the surface of the icy, ridiculously named planet. Behind them, guarding them all with a keen, observant eye, was a robotics sentinel known as the Incredible Robo-Plunger. Faster and faster, the kickball whizzed toward them, and finally, kablink! The force of the red rubber ball knocked the head right off of the Incredible Robo-Plunger. The decapitated defender jutted forward slightly, as photoatomic transmogobulating yectofentrillatosis optimistic juice dribbled out from its mangled neck hole and oozed slightly downward into the gaping mouth of Turbo 2000. Alright, I'm sorry, I have a little complaint. Why is the background like this if Uranus is an uninhabitable ice giant that doesn't have any solid surface on it, aside from its core? They're not at the core. They're on the surface, which is solid in this world. That does not make any sense whatsoever. Moving on. This wasn't fortunate because, as any robotics engineer will tell you, it's very important to keep photoatomic transmogobulating and get defensive robotics optimistic juice as far away from evil robots as possible. You certainly don't want to get even a drop of it in their mouths, for it will only make them come to life and give them an unquenchable appetite for destruction. Which, sadly, is exactly what happened that bleak night on the terribly gassy surface of Uranus. There is no surface of Uranus. What the hell is wrong with this? What's wrong with the physics of this book series? Anyway, the Turbo 2000's bulbous, bloodshot eyes smacked open and wobbled around wildly. His massive left arm creaked down and rubbed the painful, throbbing side of his porcelain lid. "Where the heck am I?" he said, looking around his fallen allies. Clumsily, he squeaked to his feet, dusted himself off, and beheld the headless mess that once was the Incredible Robo-Plunger. Then it all came back to him. The battle, the defeat, the humiliation. It wasn't long before the Turbo 2000 had pieced together every single event that had brought him and his army of Talkatoas to this frozen, frustrating fate. "I must retaliate," he said, clenching his razor-sharp porcelain teeth together tightly. "I must avenge my fallen allies." Luckily for him, he was a robot, which meant he knew a thing or two about mechanical engineering. It didn't take long for him to disassemble the Robo-Plunger, rearrange the pieces, and create a flying rocket scooter from the recycled parts of his arch-enemy. The only thing left to do was to travel the long journey from Uranus to Earth. It was a voyage that would take him nearly 3 whole pages to complete, and when he arrived, he would wage a war against the good people of Earth. A war that would threaten the very foundation of our planet. But before I can tell you that story, I have to tell you this story. Chapter 3, Melvin's Moment of Mirth. Remember back in Chapter 1 where we found out that Melvin had a whole year's worth of reasons why he needed to bring George Hell and Captain Underpants back to the present? Well, in case you're wondering what happened during that year, here's what happened during that year. Immediately after our heroes disappeared on their prehistoric journey, the cops started looking for George Hell and Mr. Krupp. Wanted posters appeared in post offices across America, but since George Hell and Mr. Krupp had traveled back in time to the Cretaceous period, they were nowhere to be found. Everyone assumed that George Hell and Mr. Krupp had robbed a bank and were hiding out in Canada and Mexico somewhere, and it wasn't too long before the cops gave up and stopped looking for them. This was sad news for most of the residents of Pico, Ohio, but not for Melvin Sneedly. Melvin was finally happy for the first time in years. No George and no Hell meant no pranks, no comics, and best of all, no interruptions. Melvin could finally go about conducting his scientific experiments, creating wild new inventions, and indulging his beautiful mind in peace. But all that happiness only lasted for about 2 weeks, because, as we mentioned earlier, you know who showed up. Chapter 4, He Who Must Not Be Flushed. The Turbo 2000 entered Earth's atmosphere in a blazing fireball from the sky. His rocket scooter roared over the rooftops of the small Ohio town as the porcelain predator bellowed out an eardrum-crushing taunt. "Yes, Johnny!" And then came the destruction. Buildings collapsed. City buses were thrown through skyscraper windows. Fires raged out of control. The chaos and devastation crippled the town, sent residents running for their lives, and annoyed the heck out of one little boy. Melvin Sneedly had been trying to get some work done in his bedroom laboratory when the attack began. All he needed was 1 or 2 more hours of uninterrupted silence to complete his experiment, but the terrible ruckus outside was really getting on his nerves. Melvin marched over to his bedroom window, poked his head up, and shouted, "Oi! I'm trying to walk, you idiot! Be quiet!" As you can probably imagine, the Turbo 2000 didn't take too kindly to being dressed down in such a manner. He swiveled his massive bowl around quickly and glared at Melvin with his raging, hard-boiled eyeballs. "Uh-oh," Melvin gulped. Suddenly, the Turbo-Toys 2000 leaped at Melvin. The tiny tattletale screamed as the malevolent miscreant chased him down the street, across the city, and into the empty, darkened hallways of Drumheart's elementary school. Melvin ran upstairs and hid under Mr. Krupp's desk while the Turbo-Toys 2000 searched through the classrooms for him. Melvin was in deep trouble. Finally, he actually needed Captain Underpants' help, but the wasteman where it was nowhere to be found. "Rats!" said Melvin. "You're falling out, and ouch!" Melvin's knee was pressing down to something sharp. Carefully, Melvin reached down and pulled the pointy little object out of his knee. It was a toenail. Not just any toenail either. It was one of Mr. Krupp's thick, greasy, yellow toenails they had clipped off the day before he had been whisked away on his journey back through time. "Ew, what a slop!" said Melvin as he flicked the toenail away. Then Melvin thought of something. He knew that Mr. Krupp was also Captain Underpants. That meant that Mr. Krupp's DNA must have some kind of superpowered element in its makeup. If Melvin could find a way to extract the superpowered element from Mr. Krupp's DNA, Melvin could, theoretically, transfer those superpowers himself. "Where's that toenail?" cried Melvin. Chapter 5, Big Melvin returns. The Turbo-Toys 2000 noisily smashed his way from classroom to classroom, getting closer to Mr. Krupp's office with each stumbling footstep. Melvin desperately searched the mangy orange carpet for Mr. Krupp's sticky toenail, digging his fingers deep into the matted shag as the sounds of carnage got louder and louder. "Where's that toenail?" Melvin screamed. Finally, Mr. Krupp's office door burst open. "Oh!" shouted the Turbo-Toys 2000. "I'm going to know you annoying little brat!" He reached down, grabbed Melvin by the foot, and pulled him toward his charming razor-sharp teeth. Screamed Melvin. Once again, Mr. Krupp's sticky toenail had washed away into Melvin's pasty, freckled skin. By this time, Melvin couldn't have been happier about it. Quickly, he reached back, untied his shoe, and slipped his foot out. Then Melvin jumped out of Mr. Krupp's window and slid down the flagpole, which the Turbo-Toys 2000 in hot pursuit. Fortunately, Melvin's little scientist wristwatch had a built-in DNA extractor. Melvin inserted the filthy toenail into his watch and programmed a complete instruction procedure while the Turbo-Toys 2000 chased him back through town. As Melvin ran screaming, his watch quickly pulverized and sonicated the toenail cells, removed the membrane lipids, proteins, and RNA, and purified and isolated a single strand of Mr. Krupp's DNA. When Melvin reached his bedroom laboratory, he quickly fed the results into his mecha computer, which identified the metallo-organic superpowered substance and began replicating it in a saline gel solution. The gel percolated slowly as it oozed in a glass beaker. "Hurry up, you dumb semi-conservative genome replication device!" shouted Melvin convolutedly as the Turbo-Toys 2000 crashed through his bedroom wall. "Gotcha!" roared the loathsome lavatory. He scooped Melvin to his gigantic fist as his wet, leathery tongue slid back and forth against his pointed porcelain premolars. With one final desperate thrust, Melvin grabbed the beaker and chucked down its green glowing contents. The Turbo-Toys 2000 popped Melvin to his mouth like a cocktail weenie and started to chew. His ferocious fangs chomped feverishly, but Melvin was tough and hard and surprisingly gristly. The Turbo-Toys 2000 struggled to swallow, attacks they found nearly impossible. With his gigantic metal fingers, he reached into his bowl and pulled out a mucus-covered little boy who didn't have a scratch on him. The Turbo-Toys 2000 gawked at Melvin in dumbfounded astonishment. "You are so immature," said Melvin. Chapter 6, Sanitized for Your Protection. Unfortunately, the epic fight that followed was way too violent and disturbing to appear in a children's book. The images and descriptions would just be too terrifying. You have nightmares for weeks, trust me. So I invited a guest illustrator, Timmy Swanson, age 4, to draw the action in a style that won't depict too much graphic detail. I've also asked Nana Gertrude, age 71, to describe the scene in her own gentle vocabulary. Take it away, Timmy and Nana.
"Thank you, dear. Now let's see what's happening here. What? Oh my, that's horrible. It looks like a little boy's... Oh dear, now what's he doing? Oh dear me, this surely is not appropriate at all. The mouth has a robot shaped like a... Well, I'd rather not say. He's just doing such dreadful things, though. And, oh my, say what kind of book is this? Oh, for heaven's sake, this is ridiculous. I've never been so offended all my... Oh, I see just about enough. Oh dear. Timmy, stop drawing this instant. No, Timmy, no.
Chapter 7, The Grandfather Chapter Part 1, Flip-O-Rama, featuring Nana and Timmy. I've had enough of this society. Shame on you. Shame you all. Okay, yeah, just a few more food pages and it'll be over. Oh dear. Oh my. More progress. Oh, for goodness sake. Chapter 8, Everybody Loves Melvin. When it was all over, the Turbo-Toys 2000 was dead and Melvin Sneedly was a hero. The mayor had a big parade in honor of Melvin. Weird Al Yankovic wrote a song about him. Even the vice president sent a letter of congratulations. Melvin Sneedly was known throughout the world as the little superpowered tattletale who saved the world. Finally, said Melvin, I'm getting the respect I deserve! Chapter 9, With great power comes a great big pain in the hiney. Melvin enjoyed being a superhero, at first. It was fun stopping runaway trains, rescuing lost children, and saving people from burning buildings. Whenever anybody needed help, all they had to do was lift their heads to the sky and cry out, "Yo, Big Melvin!" And Big Melvin would drop whatever he was doing and zip to the scene and save the day. It was all good at first, until it started to get bad. You see, after a while, people started to abuse the system. They started crying out, "Yo, Big Melvin!" all the time, and it got old pretty quickly. Melvin would drop everything, throw on his cape, fly out the window, zip through the city, and arrive at the scene, only to find out it wasn't an emergency at all. Usually, it was just someone who had misplaced her cell phone, or a kid who needed help with the video game cheat code, or some guy accidentally dropped his ball in the toilet. It was a complete waste of Melvin's time, and the interruptions were beginning to drive him crazy. Oh look, he has a Darth Vader poster on his door. At least I think that's Darth Vader. Anyway, but the final straw came one evening as Melvin was doing a synchrotron radiation experiment with his homemade oscillating field particle accelerator. 11 months of research were finally about to pay off. The klystrons and electromagnets began to accelerate the hadrons faster and faster through Melvin's homemade copper cyclone tubing. Soon, Melvin would be the first person on Earth to definitely prove the Higgs boson's existence and solve the mystery of everything. But then, with his supersonic eardrums, Melvin heard a cry from help across the city. Quickly, Melvin shut down his experiment, which caused the particle accelerator to overheat. The resulting explosion blew a hole in his bedroom floor 40 feet deep. But Melvin didn't care. Somewhere in the city, a citizen needed his help, so he grabbed his smoldering cane from the pile of ashes that used to be his bedroom closet and flew to the scene of the emergency. When he arrived, he found a middle-aged woman screaming frantically out her apartment window. "Yo, Big Melvin, help, help, it's an emergency, what's wrong?" Melvin asked her, so like, "Do these pants make you look fat?" asked the lady. And as you can see, Melvin just didn't like that question. Hang her from a pole. He had enough. Chapter 10, it's a mad Melvin. Melvin was angry, very, very angry. Since he'd become a superhero, he had no time to do his experiments. He had no time off, no sleep, no privacy, no time for anything. At that moment, Melvin made his decision. He decided for his own sanity to quit the superhero business once and for all. But getting out was going to be a lot harder than it was getting in. Melvin needed to find a superhero to replace him. So he made up his mind to locate Captain Underpants, bring him back to Pequa, and let him deal with all the hassles of superhero-dom. Finding Captain Underpants, it turns out, wasn't as hard as Melvin had expected. Melvin knew that George and Hale were usually with Captain Underpants, and Sulu the Bionic Hamster was usually with George and Hale. So, Melvin concluded, if I find Sulu, I should find Captain Underpants. Since Melvin had installed a GPS on Sulu's robotic endoskeleton, all Melvin had to do was run a simple scan on his computer for the GPS device. That's what he was trying to tell George and Hale in the last book, but they cut him off, ever so rudely. Anyway, at first the scan found nothing. So Melvin broadened his search to include all locations and all times. Finally, Melvin's search paid off. He found Sulu's last satellite reported location down by the schoolyard 29 years in the future. That wasn't too hard, Melvin sneered, but bringing them all back to the present would be a little more complicated. Chapter 11, Dark Foreshadows. Melvin went to his garage and climbed into his glow-in-the-dark time-traveling Robo-Squid suit. Quickly, the suit powered up and started slinking and slithering through the schoolyard as Melvin began the long journey to bring George, Hale, and Captain Underpants back home where they belonged. After solving some surveillance photo issues at the bank, Melvin zapped himself to the future, fetched everyone, and brought them all back 1 year earlier to the exact time and place where they had departed on their journey in our last book. George, Hale, and Captain Underpants had been through a lot in the past few days, but now it was as if they had never left at all. Everything was just as it had been. The Turbocharged would arrive on Earth for another 2 weeks, so Melvin's future as a superhero would never become a reality, and nobody was happier about that than Melvin himself. "I don't have to be a superhero anymore," cried Melvin happily. "I can finally follow my destiny, peace and quiet at last." "But you still haven't told us why you brought us back," said George. "Yeah," said Harold, "what gives?" "Oh, you'll find out," said Melvin with a foreboding chuckle. "In 2 weeks, you'll find out." Melvin unleashed a horrible, villainous laugh as his glow-in-the-dark Robo-Squid suit began to shake and buzz. Soon he and his tentacle time machine disappeared into a ball of electric light. And we never find out where exactly did he go. But anyway, Chapter 12, Headin home. George and Hale had no choice but to take Mr. Krupp home. They brought him to his front door, got the key out from behind the bushes, and let him inside. "Go over to the kitchen sink and splash some water on your face," said George. "Aye, aye, sir," said Captain Underpants. He did as he was told in no time at all. He's back to his grumpy old self. "I wonder what's going to happen in 2 weeks," said Hale as he and George walked home. "I'm sure it's no big deal," said George. "If Melvin can handle it, we can handle it." Soon George and Hale were back up at their tree house. Carefully, they placed crackers and eggs on some soft pillows under a few desk lamps. "There," said George. "That should keep them warm and cozy." George and Hale were dead tired. They hadn't slept in over 30 hours, and they'd been ready for their lives most of that time.
I need a serious nap, said Harold as he settled his beanbag chair. Me too, said George as he collapsed into his own beanbag chair. Saving the world is exhausting. I'm still a little worried about that whole 2 weeks thing, said Harold. That sounds really bad. Relax, George. There's nothing we can do about it now anyway. Let's try to stay out of trouble for the next 2 weeks, said Harold. If the world is going to end, I don't want to be stuck in detention the whole time. Don't worry so much, said George. Besides, how much trouble could we get in 2 weeks anyway? Chapter 13. 11 minutes later. George, Harold, get down here right now! George and Harold opened their eyes. Wearily, they stumbled to the treehouse door and looked down. George's mom and dad and Harold's mom were all standing down in the yard looking very angry. The school call, George's dad said. They told us you kids weren't in class today. Uh-oh, said George. We're dead, said Harold. Would you mind explaining what you've been doing all day? Asked Harold's mom angrily. George and Harold could hide the truth no longer. They decided to confess everything. We couldn't go to school today, said George. We have to save the Earth from an evil, crazy guy who's running around a giant pair of robotic pants. Yeah, said Harold. We spent the last day traveling through time, running for dinosaurs, and teaching cavemen how to defend themselves. Very funny, shouted George's dad. If you kids think you'd skip school and goof around all day, you're for big surprise. George and Harold had never seen their parents so angry. The two boys spent the next 5 hours mowing lawns, weeding gardens, vacuuming houses, washing cars, dusting furniture, cleaning out garages, whitewashing fences, doing dishes, folding laundry, and taking out garbage. It was exhausting work, but it was nothing compared to what was to come next. Now, basically, I'm gonna tell you a little bit of context for this chapter. All this time traveling stuff where they did with the K people and the dinosaurs being chased by T-Turtles, it somehow didn't make the news to the parents, and the parents are all like, and George and Harold just like, we haven't slept in 30 hours, can we just please have a nap, and then we'll do our stupid chores? Pretty much. But anyway, chapter 14, what was to come next? George and Harold never been so tired in all their lives. At 9:30 p.m., they grunted to each other and limped to their houses like zombies. Would you like a snack, dear? Said Harold's mother. He mumbled. He was too tired for a snack, too tired to take a bath, too tired to put his pajamas on or take his shoes off. He didn't even have the energy to turn out his bedroom light. He just collapsed on top of his bed and fell asleep instantly. 22 seconds later, the telephone rang. It was George. Harold's mother brought the phone out into his room and held it up to his ear. Harold was too tired to even say hello. He just mumbled, I just remembered something, said George panicking. Tomorrow's test day! Harold's bloodshot eyes popped open and he sat up straight. Oh no! Harold cried. I forgot all about that! Me too, said George. We're having major tests in all our classes tomorrow. We're gonna have to stay up all night long and study. Chapter 15. To thine own self be truant. When the sun rose the next day, George and Harold were still going through spelling checklists. George was almost done studying. Harold still had to read 44 pages of his natural history textbook. Breakfast is ready, shouted George's dad from downstairs. George stumbled down exhaustedly and tried to smoosh some waffles into his mouth. He missed. Meanwhile, Harold was sitting at his breakfast table in a burnt-out stupor, buttering his cereal and pouring milk on his toast. Did you get any sleep at all last night? Asked Harold's mom. Harold answered. Harold's answer didn't make any sense, but it was the best he could do under the circumstances. Before long, George and Harold were ready for school. They met up, as they did every school day, in George's front yard. Are you ready for all the big test today? Asked George droopily. Pretty good, said Harold. He was so tired he couldn't even answer a simple question from his best friend correctly. How was he going to manage a day's worth of tests? Let's get this over with, said George moaned. Wait, Harold, I want to tell Cuckoo's act before you go to school. Harold wobbled to George's backyard and hoisted himself up the ladder to the treehouse. Hurry up, said George. Harold did not answer. Hey, said George, we're going to be late. Harold did not come down. George climbed up the steps and peeked inside the treehouse. It was just as he expected. Harold had fallen asleep at their desk. Hey, Harold, said George, shaking his friend's shoulder. Wake up, man. We're going to be late for our test. Just 5 minutes, moaned Harold. I just need to sleep for 5 minutes late. Oh, okay, said George, but not a minute longer. George took his backpack off and set it against the treehouse door. Then he plopped down in his beanbag chair and looked at his pocket watch. 7:53 a.m. The second hand was ticking by awfully slowly. I'm just going to close my eyes for a few seconds. Just for a few seconds. That afternoon, George yawned and stretched as he rolled over his beanbag chair. He glanced at his pocket watch again. 4:41 p.m. George closed his eyes and went back to sleep. Suddenly, his eyes shot open. George screamed. Harold woke up with a jump. George cried. Harold will. George and Harold peeked out the treehouse window. Harold's mom was out in her garden. She was whistling a cheerful tune.
That's strange, said Harold. Why didn't the school call her and tell her we were absent? I have no idea, said George. George and Harold climbed down the front of the treehouse and walked over to the garden. How was school today, said Harold's mom. The same as always, I guess, said Harold. He really was guessing. George's mom heard them talking and came over. You didn't miss school today, did you? Asked George's mom. Nope, said George. Technically, George was telling the truth. He hadn't really missed school at all. Chapter 16, Super Secret Test Day. The next day when George and Harold arrived at school, Mr. Krupp was overjoyed to see them. He met them at the front door, shook their hands enthusiastically, and gave them both big sweaty hugs. This can't be good, George said. You're wrong, said Mr. Krupp. It's the best day ever. It's the day I've been waiting for it since I met you two horrible people. Let's all go to my office, shall we? I got refreshments. As they walked down the long hall, I told Mr. Krupp's office. Several teachers patted Mr. Krupp on the back and congratulated him. The entire school staff seemed elated. We're doomed, said Harold. When they finally got to Mr. Krupp's office, he plopped down into his chair and spun around a few times, giggling with glee. After a few minutes, George started to become impatient. I thought you said there were going to be refreshments, George said. Not for you! Shouted Mr. Krupp angrily, slammed his fist on his desk. He opened his drawer, pulled out a warm diet soda, and popped it open. Then he leaned back in his chair and sipped loudly as he chuckled to himself. I just want to soak this moment in, he said with delight. His fizzy brown phosphoric acid dribbled down his chins. You boys have really messed up this time, Mr. Krupp laughed. You boys have really messed up this time, Mr. Krupp laughed. You skipped school on Super Secret Test Day. Super Secret Test Day, Harold? What does that mean? I thought you never asked, Mr. Krupp said gleefully. You see, I've been looking for wedding number you two kids for years now, but I never figured out how to do it until yesterday. Then it came to me in this flash of inspiration. Super Secret Test Day! What's a secret about it? Asked George. You should be asking what's so super about it, said Mr. Krupp joyfully. Because it just might be the crowning achievement of my entire career. George and Harold looked at each other nervously. Suddenly the door opened and the school's math teacher, Miss Calculator, entered the room. She sneered down at George and Harold and poked her tongue out at them as she walked by. Here are the figures you asked for, she said, handing Mr. Krupp a large manila envelope. Thanks, Anita, Mr. Krupp said. He smelled the envelope like he was admiring the aroma of a gourmet meal. It's a real shame you boys missed school yesterday, Mr. Krupp said. Your teachers hated to do it, but they had to give you both zeros on all your tests. Boys study really hard, said Harold. Can we take makeup tests? No, Mr. Krupp said, grinning evilly from ear to ear. There'll be no makeup tests! Don't worry, Harold said George. We'll do really good on our final exams this year. We can bring our grades back up. Final exams have been canceled for this year, said Mr. Krupp cheerfully. Isn't that wonderful news? You and all your classmates will get 7 more weeks of school with no homework, no quizzes, and no studying. Your grades for the whole school year have already been calculated. Oh no, said George. We're gonna flunk the 4th grade? Actually, it's worse than that, said Mr. Krupp, his teeth glistening at a grin so wide that it seems to stretch beyond the boundaries of his face. Normally, you wouldn't get this information until summer vacation begins, but I thought it'd be nice to show you your grades early. Isn't that fun? He opened the manila envelopes and slid 2 report cards toward George and Harold. Quickly, the boys opened them up and scanned through them. George's final grade for the year was 62.7%. A terrible grade to be sure, but still a passing grade. George would move on to 5th grade next year. Harold, whose grades were not quite as good as George's, weren't so lucky. Harold's final grade was 59.7%. Harold had failed.
I'm going to have you two placed in separate classes. We're going to annihilate your friendship.
Oh no! Harold moaned. His eyes began to fill with tears. Oh, I'm gonna flaunt the 4th grade! Yikes, not so bad! Said Mr. Krupp with the light twinkling in his eyes. He looked up at Miss Calculator and they both burst into fits of laughter. There's nothing you can do about it either, Mr. Calculator sneered. You two brats will be in different grades next year. You'll never see each other at school anymore. You'll have different teachers, different classes, and different friends! Chapter 17, The Idea. I can't believe they're gonna separate us, said Harold as the boys walked home from school that afternoon. George said nothing. He was thinking. He knew there was a way to solve this problem. I can't believe I had to spend an extra year at that school, too, Harold moaned, trying not to cry. The worst part is I actually studied. I know this stuff. I could have probably gotten straight B's if I had taken those tests yesterday. That's it, cried George confidently. We can fix this. But how, said Harold? They won't let us take makeup tests. Who says we have to take makeup tests, George replied. Let's take the real test. Harold looked suspicious. What do you mean, he asked. Melvin said he kept his time-traveling squid thing in his garage, right? So George, let's borrow and go back in time to yesterday morning. Then we can take those tests like we were supposed to. Problem solved. No way, Harold protested. Whenever we travel around in time, bad stuff happens. What could be worse than being in different grades next year? George countered. Do you really want to spend an extra year at that school? Harold didn't have an argument for that. Besides, George, we're only going back in time one day. How could anything bad happen in just one day? I guess you're right, said Harold. George and Harold turned around and headed over to Melvin's house. Luckily, Melvin's garage door was open. Cautiously, the two boys sneaked inside and looked around. And there, standing in the corner beside a box of Langstrom 7-inch gangly wrenches, was the glow-in-the-dark time-traveling robot squid. We shouldn't be doing this, Harold whispered. We're trespassing and stealing. Hey, Melvin started this whole mess, George reminded Harold. We're just fixing it. Besides, we're not stealing. We're just borrowing. Against his better judgment, Harold helped hoist George up into the cockpit. Suddenly, the robot squid powered up again to glow. A few moments later, the controls were all set. Okay, said George, let's go back in time and take those dumb tests. He picked Harold up with one of his glowing tentacles, took a few steps forward, and pressed the start button. The glow-in-the-dark touch of the robot squid began shaking and sputtering as it zipped backward in time 32 hours. A blinding ball of light flashed suddenly, and George and Harold arrived bright and early yesterday morning just in time for school. As Harold helped George climb out of the cockpit, he noticed that there were now two glow-in-the-dark time-traveling robot squid suits. Hey, said George, how come there are two glow-in-the-dark time-traveling robot squid suits? Said George, I guess that one in the corner was the one from yesterday. When we went back in time, we created a duplicate time machine. Oh, said Harold, Melvin should thank us. Yeah, said George, that was very thoughtful of us. George and Harold ran back through town as fast as they could. Soon they were scrambling up the steps to draw up to school. This feels weird, said George. I've never been so happy to go to school before. Or to take tests, said Harold. And indeed, it was a happy school day for George and Harold. They took all their tests, did pretty well, most of them, and never had to deal with anything super or secret again. At least not until that afternoon. Chapter 18, Our Doppel-Gang. That afternoon, when George and Harold got home, they climbed up to their treehouse to check on Cracker's eggs. George tried to push the door open, but something was in the way. Hey, there's a backpack blocking the door, said George. He reached in and pulled it toward him. This is like my backpack. What's going on up there? Asked Harold as George rummaged through the backpack. My papers, my books, my lunch from yesterday, said George. This is my backpack. It can't be, said Harold. You're wearing your backpack. George pushed the treehouse open and looked inside. Oh no, said George. Harold climbed up next to George and looked inside the treehouse. There, sleeping at the table, was Harold himself, and next to him, sprawled out and snoring on his beanbag chair, was George. I told you something bad would happen, cried Harold. Shh, George, don't wake us up. I don't understand, Harold whispered. How come we're here? Well, it kind of makes sense, said George. We just went back in time to yesterday, right? Right, said Harold. Well, where are we yesterday? Asked George. We were right up here in the treehouse, sleeping and... Oh, I get it, said Harold. This is us from yesterday. Yeah, said George. Remember how we accidentally created an extra robot squid suit? Said Harold. I guess we accidentally created an extra George and Harold too. Perfect, said Harold sarcastically. Chapter 19, The Pact. While yesterday's George and Harold slept, George and Harold tried to figure out what to do next. How are we going to explain this to our parents? Asked Harold. How are we going to explain this to ourselves? Asked George. Yesterday, George yawned and stretched as he rolled over his beanbag chair. He glanced at his pocket watch, then closed his eyes to go back to sleep. Suddenly, his eyes shot open. Yesterday, George screamed. Yesterday, Harold awoke with a shout. Yesterday, George cried. Hey, who are you guys? Yesterday, George rubbed his eyes and looked at his twin. I must be dreaming, he said. Either that or I'm seeing double. Well, said George, it's a long story. He and Harold told her yesterday's selves what had happened and quickly caught them both up on the events of the past three and a half chapters. Now what are we supposed to do? Asked yesterday, George. We can't tell our parents, said Harold. But where are we all going to sleep? Asked yesterday, Harold. And how are you all going to get enough food? Said yesterday, George. And clean clothes, said Harold. Everyone was beginning to panic except for George, who had been deep in thought for a while. George didn't seem worried at all. In fact, a devilish grin was beginning to spread across his face. You know, George said, maybe we're looking at this the wrong way. Maybe this is a good thing. A good thing, cried yesterday, Harold incredulously. Yeah, said George. We've always said that there's never enough time to do what we want to do. So let's take shifts. Me and Harold will start going to school and doing our homework on even numbered days. You guys will go to school and do homework on odd numbered days. Yeah, but what we do while you guys are at school? Asked yesterday, George. Whatever you want, said George. Hang out in the treehouse, play video games, make comics, watch monster movies. It doesn't matter. You guys get to relax and take the day off every other day. I get it, said yesterday, George, smiling devilishly. Then you guys can take the day off while we're at school and stuff. Yeah, said George. Just think of the possibilities. I don't know, said Harold and yesterday, Harold at the same time. Don't worry, said George. It'll be great. We'll have twice as much fun as normal and only half the work. Yeah, said yesterday, George. What could possibly go wrong? Different shirt, yes I know, but that's not important. What's important is Chapter 20, Shift Workers. Since today was an even-numbered weekday, it was decided that yesterday George and Gusher would go to school the next day. So the yesterday boys said goodbye and headed down to respective homes to eat, do homework, and prepare for the next day at school. George and Harold were ready for a night off. Harold grabbed a stack of comics, George turned on the monster movie, and the two friends settled into their beanbag chairs for some well-deserved R&R. Fortunately, they had enough juice boxes, Zing-Zong cupcakes, and fruit roll flops to last them for a while. Around 9:30 p.m., George called Pizza Palace and ordered 2 calzones, some cheesy breadsticks, and 2 2-liter bottles of ice cold root beer. No, root beer. The boys went in George's driveway so the delivery guy wouldn't ring the doorbell. Soon the two friends were enjoying the finest carbohydrates money could buy in the quiet comfort of their cozy treehouse. This is the life, said George as he pressed play on the horror movie masterpiece Baby Blob 2, The Squish and Ink. Harold, who was usually cautious in situations like this, had to admit it. This was indeed the life. Chapter 21, Problems. The next morning, George and Harold woke up late. It's nice to sleep in for a change, isn't it? Said George. Yeah, said Harold, but I gotta pee. This was something that George and Harold had thought about. Usually they would just climb down the ladder, run to their houses to go to the bathroom. But George and Harold's moms both worked from home, and they would not be happy to see the boys running in and out of the house on a school day. Fortunately, empty 2-liter bottles came in very handy for such situations. But as they poured their contents of their emergency urinals out the window, that's kind of gross. Both boys knew the solution wouldn't work for long. Our food is running low, said Harold, and I spent all my allowance on those calzones last night. No problem, said George. We'll make a comic book selling on the playground at school and use the money to buy all the junk we need. We could even buy one of those portable camping toilet thingies. But we're not supposed to go to school today, said Harold. Actually, we're not supposed to go to our classes today, George clarified. As long as we're never in the same place as our doubles, we should be fine. So George and Harold cleared a space at their desk and began working on their newest comic book. It's called Chapter 22, Super Diaper Baby 2.5. Action, triple Flip-O-Rama, and special appearance of Dogman. The George began Harold since. One morning, the house gets his house, everybody's watching TV. So, when suddenly, we interrupt the show for breaking news. Petey the cat has escaped from jail, and he has vowed revenge on Super Diaper Baby and Diaper Dog. That's terrible, I know. Breaking the fourth wall a bit, huh? We gotta be very careful. Petey's gonna try and trick us. We must be on the lookout for his evil ways. 2 seconds later. Oh, I wonder who that could be. Yes. Hello, I'm P.T. Duckhat. I'm the world's most famous clown. Can Billy Diaper Dog be my big brain? Okay. Soon, you can wear all this big floating meat. Alright. Then the big parade started. And these pictures. I think I'm being reminded of that Uncle Grandpa parade thingamajiggy. I'm reminded of a whole bunch of other cartoons while reading these books. But moving on. But then, is everyone having fun? Yeah, good, because I have one last surprise. He took off his nose, he took off his makeup, he took off his wig and hat, and he took off his clothes. Guess who? P.T. Duckhat was really P.T. the cat. Get it? It's a play on words. Get it? No. Never mind. Give me your money, pups. So then, hey, look, it's P.T. Let's get him. Oogie. But, hey, I'm stuck. Me too. That's because the baby flow is really a robo baby. And our heroes were stuck in the powerful grip of the mighty robo baby. Petey collected wallets and purses from the crowd. Fill her up. While robo baby destroyed the city. Rats, who will save us? Then Diamond got an idea. He ran over to robo baby and climbed up him. Diamond scratched. Soon Diamond's fleece flew off and landed in robo baby's diaper. Then, I'm free! Me too! Then there's triple Flip-O-Rama. Might as well show you. Diamond had a little itch. His fleas were as white as snow. And whenever the robo baby went, the fleas were sure to go. Beep beep. The end. But then, click to be continued. Yeah, this comic ends on a cliffhanger. You big Dav Pilkey, you gotta pick up where this left off. But then again, everyone who just reads the Super Diaper Baby might miss this comic, so this might be tied to the beginning of Super Diaper Baby. I don't know. Chapter 23, Dream a Little Dream of Us. Hey, that comic turned out pretty good, said Harold. Yeah, not too shabby, said George. Let's go to school and make copies of it. But what if somebody sees us, said Harold. Don't worry, said George. I've got it all figured out. So George and Harold got dressed, headed to school, and sneaked into the office. In no time at all, they were running off copies of their new comic book and stapling them together. Things were going very well until the school secretary, Miss Anthorpe, came back from a lunch break. What are you kids doing in my office? Miss Anthorpe yelled. We're not in your office, said George with a mischievous smile. You're dreaming. Dreaming, said Miss Anthorpe. Yeah, and I can prove it, said George. Just call our teacher, Miss Ribble, on the intercom. She'll tell you we're both in class right now. In class? Said Miss Hathor. Yeah, said George. Obviously, we can't be in two places at the same time, so this has to be a dream, right? Miss Hathor was suspicious. She grabbed the microphone on the intercom and contacted Miss Ribble's room. Miss Ribble, she said, where's Georgia Hair right now?
Why, they're right here in my classroom.
Miss Ribble replied through the speaker. Oh, really? Said Miss Hathor.
Of course.
Said Miss Ribble.
They've been here all day.
Miss Hathor was stumped. Then she got a sneaky idea. All right, she said, if they're really in your classroom, then send them both to the office right now.
Okay.
Said Miss Ribble. Miss Hathor turned and looked at Georgia Hair with a snarly grin. I don't know what kind of trick you kids are trying to pull, she said, but you can't fool me. Suddenly, Georgia Hair walked into the office. Miss Hathor looked at them and screamed. Then she looked at Georgia Hair and screamed again. Her head made a swishing sound and to swivel back and forth between Georgia Hair and Yesterday Hair. See, said George, I told you this was a dream. You're right, cried Miss Hathor. It all seems so vivid, but I must be dreaming. Of course you are, said George. And why should you waste a perfectly good dream hanging around in the office? That's a good point, said Miss Hathor. And why bother raising us tight, restricting clothes? After all, it's my dream. I can do whatever I want. Now wait a minute, said Harold, but it was too late. Miss Hathor hoisted her dress over her head, ripped it off, and threw out the window. Whee! She yelled, dreaming is fun! And then she ran away, laughing her head off, and slammed the office door behind her. Now, as a little side note, the picture of her stripping down near naked is it's probably best unshown in this video. Because of YouTube's stupid guidelines and also the negative reviews on Amazon.com. But anyway. What are you guys doing here? See, yesterday, George sternly. This is our day to be at school. We ran out of food and we needed to buy some supplies, George. So we made a new comic to sell on the playground. Yesterday, George walked over to the comic machine and inspected the new comic. How many did you make? He asked. About 200, said Harold. We'll leave them with us, said yesterday, Harold. We'll sell them at recess today and bring the money to the treehouse after school. Yes, George. But you guys need to get out of here! Yesterday, George interrupted. If anybody else catches us together, we'll all be in big trouble. All right, said George. Get out now! He shouted yesterday, George angrily. All right, said George. Gee whiz! Yesterday, George and Harold scooted to the comic in the arms and left the office in a huff. Man, said George, today was supposed to be our day to have fun, but we won't let us. I know, said Harold. Who do you think we are? We can't tell us what to do, said George. I'm not the boss of me. Me neither, said Harold. I'm gonna do what I want, even if I don't want me to. That's telling yourself, said George. Chapter 24, Twin Pranks. George and Harold went out into the hallway and started switching the letters around at a bulletin board. Soon they were spotted by two teachers. Oi, Mr. Meter Park, what do you kids think you're doing? Actually, we're not doing anything, said George. You guys are dreaming. It took even less effort to persuade Mr. Meter and Miss Labeler that they were dreaming too. Once they looked through Miss Ribble's classroom window and saw George and Harold sitting in their seats, they were convinced. There can't be two Georges and two Harolds, said Mr. Meter. So this has to be a dream. That's right, said Harold. You can do anything you want. Just don't take off your clothes, and oops, too late. Mr. Meter tore off down the hallway, laughing like a crazy person and singing Itsy Bitsy Spider at the top of his lungs. Miss Labeler headed straight for the teacher's lounge, where she yanked open the refrigerator and started stuffing her face with everyone's lunches. Hallelujah, she cried. I can eat anything I want and not gain weight. Hey, that's our food, cried Mr. Rectin. No, it's not, giggled Labeler. This is a dream. Check it out for yourself. With a mouthful of tuna salad, chocolate chip cookies, she led them all down to Miss Ribble's classroom window. Soon they were convinced, too. George and Howard watched in shock as teacher after teacher started going crazy. Mr. Meter brought in a garden hose and started spraying down the hallway with soapy water. It's the world's biggest slip and slide! He cried. By the time Mr. Krupp came out of the teacher's bathroom, nearly all the staff, including the janitor, the lunch ladies, and most of the parent volunteers, were laughing their heads off, throwing soap suds at each other and slipping and sliding down the hallway in their giant underwear. Mr. Krupp screamed. It's the greatest dream ever! Cried Mrs. Dakin. She brought Mr. Krupp over to Miss Ribble's classroom window and showed him the proof. But when Mr. Krupp saw that there were now two Georges and two Harolds, his reaction was a bit different from the other adults' reactions. He tried to speak. He tried to convince himself that he was dreaming. He tried to say something, but all that came out was Chapter 25, 12 Days of Chaos. It didn't take long before the cops showed up. They attempted to restore order, but things didn't go very well. We can either do this the easy way or the hard way, shouted Officer McQuigley. Let's do it the fun way, cried Miss Fish. She yanked Officer McQuigley's pants around his ankles. I got a good idea, said George. What? Asked Harold. Run, said George. By the time it was all over, the entire staff of Drumheart Temperature School was in jail. The charges ranged from indecent exposure and resisting arrest to reckless endangerment and pantsing a police officer. The cops didn't quite know what to do with Mr. Krupp, though. He hadn't really done anything wrong. He just stood there in the same spot for hours and hours, saying blah 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 over and 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 over again. sorry, I couldn't resist. Anyway, so it was decided that he should be admitted into the Pequot Valley home for the reality challenge. Again, what this series calls a mental asylum. I already told you in Captain Underpants Book 4, Read-Aloud. Anyway, where he remained unchanged for nearly 2 weeks. Good God. George and Helen, their twins, spent the next 12 days of being very careful. Great job, shouted yesterday George angrily. Our teachers were in jail and Mr. Krupp's in the Goof house. These past 2 weeks have been a total disaster. 2 weeks? Said Harold inquisitively. Yeah, yesterday George continued. In the past 2 weeks, you guys have... No, wait, Harold interrupted. Wasn't something bad supposed to happen in 2 weeks? George, yesterday, Harold all thought back to Melvin Sneedly's cryptic warning in Chapter 11. Oh, yeah! They all said simultaneously. The 4 boys looked around them. They checked the horizon. They sniffed the air. They put their ears to the floor and listened. Nothing. There was no sign of any trouble. Huh, said George. I guess nothing better is going to happen after all. Suddenly, a fireball shot out from behind the clouds. Then came an echoing, eardrum-piercing sound of relentless terror. It was a laugh, a horrifying, sinister, stomach-churning laugh that the boys had not heard for many months. A laugh that they hoped would never hear again. "Uh-oh!" said the Georges. "We're doomed!" cried the Heralds. Chapter 26.
Here's Johnny!
I couldn't resist that either. Anyway, the Turbo 2000 zipped across the rooftops in his homemade rocket scooter, laughing ferociously as a trail of choking smoke filled the afternoon sky. Everyone screamed, everyone cried, everyone hid, everyone that except for George and Harold and their dreadfully distressed duplicates. When will they stop pulling off alliterations? The 4 friends ran as fast as they could to the Pequot Valley home for the reality challenge. There was only one person who could stop this horrifying beast and was locked away in the Goof house. The 4 dashed toward the sanitarium's front door and slid across the freshly waxed floor to the reception decks. "We need to see Mr. Krupp," roared George, almost out of breath. "He's a patient here." "Sorry," said the nurse, "but patients can't have visitors without a doctor's permission." "But he could save the world." "Right, he's Captain Underpants." "Sure he is," said the nurse sarcastically. "Listen, Bob, we currently have 9 patients who claim to be Captain Underpants. We also have 4 Wonder Women, 7 Albert Einsteins, and 1 Elvis Presley. Well, can we at least talk to him?" asked yesterday Harold. "No," said the nurse. "Nobody talks to the king." "Not Elvis," said George angrily. "Mr. Krupp." "Oh," said the nurse. "I'm sorry." "But no!" "Rats!" cried yesterday Harold. "Captain Underpants is stuck in the Goof house." "We can't bust him out," said George. "But I know somebody who can. Follow me." Frantically, the boys ran back across the city. Chapter 27. Disguise Crazy. George had an idea, and he needed everyone's help to pull it off. Hale grabbed some cardboard boxes from his garage. George found some white spray paint in his garage. Yesterday, George and yesterday Hale each grabbed a barbecue grill from their backyards. With a little ingenuity and a lot of duct tape, the 4 boys had constructed 2 surprisingly convincing Target toilet costumes. George and Hale climbed into the boxes and wheeled themselves awkwardly into town. Soon they came face to face with the Turbo 2000. Yum, eat 'em up," said George, opening and closing the barbecue grill lid with every syllable. "Yeah, eat 'em up and stuff," said Harold, who doing the same thing with his lid. "Oi!" cried the Turbo 2000. "I thought you guys were dead!" "I'm not quite dead," said George. "It's just a flesh wound." "Yeah, me too," said Harold. "Good," said Turbo 2000. "You can help me look for those 2 kids who messed up all of our plans a few months ago." Okay, said George. "But what about that bald guy with the cape and the underwear?" "I'll get it later," said the Turbo 2000. "First I want to find those 2 meddling kids." "I really think you should find that underwear guy first," said Harold. "Yeah," said George. "He says some really mean things about you." "Oh, he did, said the shot at the Turbo 2000. "What did he say?" Said George. "He said your hair looks so big, when it rains, your body stays dry." "Yeah," said Harold, "and you're so cheap, you try to conserve toilet paper by using both sides." "Enough!" screamed the Turbo 2000. "Where is he?" "Right this way," said Harold. Chapter 28. One smashed into the cuckoo's nest. The Turbo 2000 followed George and Harold back to the sanitarium. He marched through the front doors and headed toward the restricted area. The nurses screamed and ran for safety. Quickly, George grabbed the intercom, turned up the volume, and started snapping his fingers into the microphone. The sounds of finger snapping echoed through the hallways of Pequot Valley home for the reality challenge. The Turbo 2000 crashed from room to room. Mr. Krupp, who had been comatose for nearly 2 weeks, suddenly began to change. First, a mischievous twinkle gleamed in his eyes. Then a giant smile spread across his face. Suddenly, he ripped off his straitjacket, threw off his pajamas, and grabbed a curtain from a nearby window. Captain Underpants was back, and the battle of the century was about to begin. Chapter 29. The Crown Got Fox at the Part 2 in Flip-O-Rama. Welcome to Pow Town. Psh, 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 psh. Spank you very much. Psh, psh, oh, psh, 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 oh. I'll swallow that and swallow. Chapter 30. Tears of a Commode. Let that be a lesson to you, said Captain Underpants gallantly as the Turbo 2000 cried and cried. Well, said George, I'm glad that's over with. Yeah, said Harold, that ended up being a lot easier than I thought it would be. At that precise moment, a single teardrop from the quavering eyeballs of the turbocharger flew through the air and landed on Captain Underpants' face. Splash! Suddenly, our hero's expression began to change. The sparkle disappeared from his eyes, his posture deflated, and his goofy grin morphed into a scowling grimace. What the heck is going on here? Mr. Krupp yelled. Uh-oh, said Harold. Mr. Krupp turned and saw the giant numbers turbocharger 2000 blubbering behind him. The flying principal screamed, and he ran away, screaming his head off. The turbocharger wasn't sure what was going on, but he decided to chase Mr. Krupp and see what happened. Soon, the Leviathan lavatory cornered Mr. Krupp and scooped him up in his mighty robotic fist. I give up! Cried Mr. Krupp. I surrender! Please don't hurt me! Gee, said the turbocharger. That ended up being a lot easier than I thought it would be. Now I just need to find those two annoying kids. Mr. Krupp perked up a little. What two annoying kids? He asked. Well, said the turbocharger, one of them had a fly top at a tie, and the other one wore a t-shirt and had a bad haircut. Hey, I know those kids, said Mr. Krupp excitedly. I even know where they live. Really? Said the turbocharger. Then what are you waiting for? Come on, my two toilet minions. Behold, my tyrannical retaliation is at hand. Mr. Krupp pointed the way, and the turbochargers marched off toward George and Harold's houses. Uh-oh, said George. We're doomed again, said Harold. Chapter 31, The Re-Retaliation. The turbochargers marched to George and Harold's houses, smashing through buildings, pushing over cars, and leaving a smoldering path of destruction behind him. George and Harold tried to keep up, but the turbochargers left them trailing behind. Oh no, cried Harold. He's heading for our houses. There's no way to warn ourselves. Yeah, there's no way for you to telepathically communicate, even though these other two people are you from yesterday. But anyway, it didn't matter, however, because George and Harold could hear the turbochargers coming from miles away. I think it's heading straight for us, cried yesterday George. But how would he know where to find us? Asked yesterday Harold. Turn left at Vine Street, said Mr. Krupp. The kids live on this block. I'll bet they're hiding up in that treehouse of theirs. Yesterday George and Harold saw the turbochargers headed for the backyard. They could feel the earth shake with under each stomp of his massive metal feet. George and Harold locked the doors of the treehouse. Yesterday Harold hid under the desk. Okay, said Mr. Krupp. I've led you to those two kids you were looking for. Can I go now? Sure, said Mr. Krupp. You can go right in here. He shoved the screaming principal into his mouth and flushed his little handle. Mr. Krupp screamed in terror as he spun around in a swirling whirlpool of saliva. Then the turbocharger Johnson swallowed hard and Mr. Krupp was flushed away with a grueling The turbocharger Johnson slammed against the tree with his massive metallic shoulder. Yesterday hair went flying. The bookshelf fell over, comments flew everywhere, and Cracker's eggs wobbled around precariously on the deck's top. Screamed the turbocharger Johnson, he smashed into the tree once more. Yesterday hair went flying again. The three eggs teetered perilously back and forth to the edge of the table. I'm warning you! Cried the turbocharger Johnson. Come on now, we'll make you suffer! He applied into the tree a third time. This time the window smashed, the TV toppled over, and Cracker's eggs flew off on the table. Now, before we continue, I'd like to share with you these teases for the next upcoming Dogman books. Bookum Dogman, The Bark Knight Rises, Dogman Tooth, Wrath of Petey. I think that's part of Dogman Tooth, Wrath of Petey, and I think this is an excerpt of Bookum Dogman. So yeah, I knew they had copies here somewhere. Anyway, yesterday Harold leave for the X. No! Yesterday Harold as the three purple and orange speckled eggs flew through the air. They hit the floor and shattered with a terrible crash. Chapter 32. Surprise, surprise, surprise. As the treehouse swayed violently from side to side, yesterday Harold sifted frantically through the broken eggshell fragments. Suddenly, yesterday Harold's hand felt something warm and fuzzy. Carefully, he pulled it out of the broken eggshell pieces. It was yesterday Harold wasn't quite sure what it was. I'll say you the truth, it's a half-hamster, half-pterodactyl. Well, apparently Sula and Cracker, the kids, you'll find out what they do when you're older. You'll find out what and Harold's face is just processed, it just looks at the thing, and George is like just staring back with just a blank face, and Harold just looking at it like that. Anyway. What the heck is this thing? Crazy Harold, the tiny fuzzy creature, wrapped its wings around them and looked up lovingly into his eyes. Yesterday, George pulled two more fuzzy winged creatures out of the shell fragments and stared at them in disbelief. This can't be! He cried. The trio shook violently, and yesterday went flying again. The three tiny creatures happily wigged their way up to the boy's face and started licking their cheeks. Gross. The turbocharger climbed up the side of the treehouse and tore the door off its hinges. He reached in and grabbed yesterday his mighty metallic hand. I'm going to now! Roared the preposterous porcelain predator. Again with these alliterations, it needs to stop it right now. Anyway, as he shook the two boys back and forth, the three fuzzy creatures fell to the floor. Quickly, they got to their feet and excitedly flapped their wings. They weren't sure what was happening, but it seemed like fun. The Doppel-Gang doesn't jump down from the treehouse and squeeze the two boys tightly in his fist.
Finally, I shall avenge my father and take my place as the supreme leader of the earth!
He shouted. The three tiny creatures fluttered down to Yesterday, Harold, wagging their little tails with excitement. But when they saw the looks of terror on the boys' faces, they realized that this was not a game. Quickly, the three creatures took action and began circling the Doppel-Gang like mosquitoes. Then they each took turns zooming in close and taking quick bites out of him with their bionic jaws. Oh! Cried the Doppel-Gang as he desperately swatted the swimming creatures. What the heck are those things? Well, they already trust what they are. Another one dived in, bit him on the forearm, and yanked out a steel bolt. Screamed the frustrated fiend as he released the boys and began swatting at the flying beasties with all his might. The strange furry creatures grasped the Doppel-Gang by his legs and shoulders and lifted him off the ground. Flapping their wings as hard as they could, they carried the villain's lavatory higher and higher into the air. It's my pony and I'll fly if I want to. Let's just listening. Soon there were more than half a mile up in the sky. Let go! Roared the terrified Doppel-Gang 2000. This turned out to be a poor choice of words, because the three fuzzy creatures did exactly that. All at once, they released their grip on the evil robotic behemoth, and it sent him tumbling downward. Faster and faster, he thrilled through a cloud, spinning out of control, screaming in terror. Chapter 33. To make a long story short. Chapter 34. Welcome back, Krupp. The Doppel-Gang 2000 had smashed into a vacant parking lot and exploded with a sonic boom that shattered nearly every window in the city. When the smoke finally cleared, Mr. Krupp sat alone in the center of the impact point, surrounded by mangled metal and jagged chunks of porcelain. Everything around him had been destroyed, but Mr. Krupp, surprisingly, was unharmed. His superpowers had protected him. Soon, the two cops arrived at the scene. Are you okay? Yes. I guess so, said Mr. Krupp. This must be one of those crazy nightmares I keep having. Oh, great, said Officer Mir quickly. It looks like we got another naked schoolteacher who thinks he's dreaming. Let's lock him up with the others, said the chief of police. Despite lack of evidence that he still did nothing wrong. Chapter 35, Hamsterdactyls. I guess that's what you call hamsterdactyl. But anyway, George and Harold finally made it home just as the three furry creatures were returning to the treehouse. Yesterday, Harold told them what had happened and how the strange fuzzy creatures inside Cracker's eggs had saved the Earth from total destruction. What are these things anyway? Asked George. They kind of look like a cross between a hamster and pterodactyl, said Harold. Ew, said George. That makes the solo Crackers ew! But that doesn't make sense, said Harold. How can a mammal made with a reptile? Ew! Cried George again. I mean, unless Sulu's DNA was mutated when he morphed with that bionic endoskeleton, said Harold. Cried George again. I suppose a mammal with mutated genes might be able to breed with a prehistoric reptile, Harold speculated. What part of ew don't you understand? Shouted George. Sorry, said Harold. Soon the four friends and their three new pets were back up in their treehouse. They all worked together to clean out the mess. Then the two Heralds made bets for the baby Hamsterdactyls out of shoe boxes, while the two Georges thought up names for them. Let's call the girl Dawn, said George. What about the two boys? Asked Yesterday Harold. Orlando and Tony, said Yesterday George. Harold wrote the new pets' names on their shoe box beds, but he still seemed perplexed. Are you still trying to figure out how we ended up with three half-pterodactyl, half-bionic hamster pets? Asked George. Yes, sort of, Harold replied. You're thinking too much, George. Listen, if you look too closely at these stories, they're going to fall apart completely. What do you think this is, Shakespeare? I guess you're right, said Harold. Of course I'm right, said George. Just go with it, man. Chapter 36. All's well that ends poorly. Well, that was a satisfying ending, said Yesterday Harold as he tucked Tony, Orlando, and Dawn into their beds. What do you mean satisfying, said George. Are the city is destroyed, our teachers are in jail, there are four of us, and our three mutant pets think we're their moms. Oh yeah, said Yesterday Harold. I guess there are a lot of loose ends in this story. Uh-oh, said Harold. That can only mean one thing. What? As Yesterday George. Another sequel, said Harold.
Oh, no!
Whined George Yesterday George.
Here we go again!
Moaned Harold Yesterday Harold. So anyway, this book was brought to you by Dav Pilkey, the creator of the entire Captain Underpants series. Read the books. Enjoy the books. Read the spin-offs. Enjoy the spin-offs. And I'll see you next week where we'll read the supposedly last book in the series. Captain Underpants is a sensational saga of Star Stinks lots. Not really a saga, it's just one book, but it's a saga, so I'll know. See you there. But by Mr. Meter, yes it is. You'll find out by